Now, Gideon, whom we read about, was the fifth judge that God raised in the land. And his story is an interesting one. The first thing that I want to draw your attention to regarding Gideon is the circumstances that he found himself in. So what were these circumstances? And it wasn't just he alone, but the whole nation was going through that crisis. Number one, he was living in fear. Just like most of the people, in fact, everybody was living in fear. And they were living in fear because of their oppressors, the Midianites and the other people they conspired with against the people of Israel. They were living in fear. Number two, they were in hiding. Gideon was in hiding. If you check the passage we read, you would notice that it talked about how they went to hide in the mountains and in the caves just to hide from their oppressors. So that was another circumstance of his life. He was in hiding. Number three, he was under oppression and intimidation. And because of that, he couldn't go about his life freely, and he couldn't live his life as freely as he would have wished. That was the problem during that time. Because of their oppressors, they couldn't move about freely. They couldn't live their lives freely. They couldn't do what they wanted to do. They were under oppression and intimidation. Number four, things were very difficult and conditions were very bad for them. And it is clear from the passage we read, because they will plant their crops and then the marauders, their enemies, will come and destroy the crops. So how can you have your harvest? How can you have food? Because of that, there was great famine in the land. And not just that, their enemies will come and make away with their goats and their cattle and their donkeys and their camels. So they stripped them of everything that they had and made life very difficult for them. Then the last circumstance we see about him was that God had abandoned him. And God had abandoned his people, which was one of the things that Gideon lamented about when he spoke to the angel, that God has abandoned us. So we see 5 circumstances: living in fear, in hiding, oppressed and intimidated, living under very difficult and terrible conditions, abandoned by God. These were the circumstances that Gideon found himself in. And I have an amen.